Hello, Anthony.
Hello, Claudine.
We're here today to talk about United States Court of Appeals decision from just a few days ago, August 5th, 2016, U.S. Tax Court. Okay, it's Ori Eshel and Linda Coriel Eshel versus the IRS.
That's right.
Now, what we know here working at the law firm is that international taxation is screwy. Very screwy.
Oh, yeah.
Social security systems get complicated for Americans who work overseas. Lots of details that have to be worked out. So this particular case involves a totalization agreement, and we'll get into that in a minute. Between the U.S. and France. The specific issue on appeal is whether or not two French taxes enacted into law after that totalization agreement was adopted, amended or supplemented, covered the agreement. So let's sort of interpret that into regular English.
Well, this is a case I actually haven't been following until you brought it to my attention, and I'm a little bit surprised. There's a few things that are sort of surprising of this, and I think the conclusion, which we'll get to, is really the most surprising to me. So it's in the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, and that's really the Supreme Court's the major leagues. The D.C. District Court. That's where they're grooming the next ones, and that's where they're looking to pull the Supreme Court justice or Solicitor Generals. That is the one you want to be in.
It's where the smarty pants.
That's where the super smarty pants and somewhat politically motivated judges go. It's got a ton of resources in law school. Getting the dream clerkship at if you can't get the Supreme Court, this here is getting the D.C. District Court is not too shabby either. So, they got some incredible talent there. And when you are reading a decision, a lot of it will probably be written by law clerks. A lot of the research, a lot of them can have a really big impact on how a case comes down. How the law, being a law clerk is an incredibly important position. Either you might be able to turn a judge's opinion, or at least you provide the intellectual backfill for the judge's preconceived notion. You should do more of that.
So then in basic human terms, what's a totalization agreement? Okay,
so the totalization agreement, we could just sort of get rid of that word together, but the totalization agreement, I just said it there. Basically, there's a foreign tax credit. Okay. And so, hey, taxes you pay in France, you can get a credit for that in the U.S. Okay. Sounds simple. You put that on your Form 1116.
Okay.
Hey, look, I paid all these taxes in France. Don't make me, give me credit for that. So, yeah, I might owe you something more, IRS, but at least don't tax me twice, because I already had to pay France this, and you could have a situation where somebody could owe more than what they make if you didn't have these. It's possible.
Makes sense.
But now this is what it comes down to. This is why it's relevant. What counts as a tax? Do sales tax count as a tax that you can claim as a foreign tax credit? No.
Okay.
Because it's not an income tax. Now, when it gets tricky, what about a Social Security? Does that count as a tax? It's on your. Most people think of it as income tax because it's on their W-2.
Right.
And it's based on your income. Well, just being based on your income doesn't make it an income tax, because the law says it's not. Law says it's a Social Security tax. It's a Medicare tax. So self-employment taxes, or employment taxes, as those are called, they're not really income tax. And when you see, a lot of times there's, I think in 2012, Mitt Romney got in trouble for saying only 47% of people don't pay federal income tax, which is true. It actually might even be smaller than that. Majority of people don't pay federal income tax. What they pay is Social Security and Medicare. And that your federal income tax really only starts to come into play when you're over the 50% of median. So that's what you have to, that's sort of the few things you need to know the difference of, that not all taxes based on income are income taxes. Really cute.
Now, the totalization agreement was made, and then later 2 laws were added.
Right.
And that's where the issue sort of arises.
Right, because we need to know, because France has payroll taxes too. So are these payroll taxes that don't count as a tax, or are these payroll taxes that do count as a tax? So in 1987, France and the U.S. came to a totalization agreement to say, hey, this Social Security we're going to include in the TA. However, and so therefore, when it's included, that's a bad thing. That means you can't take it. And then there was some language in there to say, and any tax that's sort of related to this as amended or supplemented. Okay, and those are the critical two words right there: amended or supplemented. So if it is a, if it is a payroll tax that's like the tax that exists in 1987, comes in. So 1990, 1996, France added new payroll taxes.
Okay.
Okay, so here, this is to set the scene right. The taxpayer wants to say, hey, these new ones I get credit for because they're not in the totalization agreement. The IRS, on the other hand, is saying, oh, no, that's in the totalization agreement because that's just amending and supplementing what's already in existence. So that's the legal question, okay? Does this law, is this law sort of unattached to itself? Hey, look, it's a totally different type of tax. It's not amending and supplementing what was already there, or it's amending and supplementing.
Okay, so now this couple decides
now based on what I saw so far, I could see the argument going either way.
Right.
So it gets to tax court, okay? And the tax court judge, and this is a beefy issue, it's a beefy issue, says, so the tax court judge says, well, let me take a look at what does the dictionary say, amend and supplement it. Okay. Hey, look, it means this. And then it also takes a note to say, oh yeah, and these two new laws are administered by the same people, and it kind of goes for the same thing. So I'm going to say it amends and supplements, so therefore it's in the totalization agreement, therefore taxpayers, you lose. Okay? By the way, we always want the taxpayers to win.
Yeah.
Right? So even though I've taken a stance that might sound like I'm on the government side, I'm really not.
No.
I wish the taxpayers win. It's sort of unfair that any tax based on income, they play these word games. Well, it's not really an income tax because it's not called an income tax. But how does it function? Oh, it taxes on income. Okay. All right. So the taxpayer loses, goes to appeal. This is what we're looking at here. You take a direct appeal. You get an appeal from tax court to the district court. And this is where, I don't know, the tone of this, whoever wrote this opinion, I think was having a bad day. They just seem to have problems with everybody. They seem to have problems with the IRS. I don't know, maybe there was justification. They have problems with the taxpayers and problems with the tax court. Namely, this is what their beef is. Their beef is that, well, yeah, you're interpreting the totalization agreement, but you're interpreting it from the IRS's side, from the U.S. side.
Right.
What we really want to know is how would they interpret this in France?
They wouldn't.
Well, right. And it's like, well,
Why would they?
I would too. I would love to know too. And there's situations where you can figure out, like, well, you go and cite an opinion. Yes, here's the exact issue. They decided in France. The Supreme Court of France decided this exact issue. Here it is.
Yes.
Now, this is the problem, is if you're looking for an opinion on this, any precedent, how did France decide this exact issue? Do these two new taxes fall within the totalization agreement that France has with the United States? Well, who in France would bring that issue? Right? Where does this issue come up? Because now maybe the taxpayers can go in France and file a declaratory judgment to say, hey, I want a ruling on this. Do these two taxes, are these in the totalization agreement or not? And I could see the French judges saying, well, this has nothing to do with us. How we decide on this doesn't impact us. We don't see really any legal claim. We're going to dismiss the case. There's no reason for it. And I don't see any French person
why would they
ever doing this. Like, you have to pay the tax. That's the
Yeah.
Why do you want to know?
Yeah.
Here's the bill.
You're a French citizen. You pay the tax.
You pay it. So it's asking for something that's likely never going to be. The District Court of Columbia is asking for our circuit court is asking for an opinion that's never likely going to be in existence.
And our theory on that is that maybe they did that just because they couldn't figure it out.
I know. I was thinking that well, geez, they got some brilliant talent here. And man, if there's a definition of a punt, this is it. Because a claim, and this must have driven, there's probably some, as the clerks are debating around the draft, I could imagine some people probably getting a little upset because the sentence before its conclusion doesn't flow. And it's in short-circuiting these inquiries. This is the district court hammering the tax court for not looking at how France is going to interpret it, basically, but rather how the IRS would interpret it, and basically the court using its own judgment of, hey, look, this is how France operates. It's taxed by the same people. It's for the same things, which is allowable, but sort of mischaracterized what the tax court did, I think, a little bit. In short-circuiting those inquiries, the tax court invoked Tax Court Rule 146, which provides that a dispute over foreign law is a legal, not factual dispute. We have no disagreement with that point.
Okay.
The court's determination must be treated as a ruling of a question of law. Okay. Now, why this is important? Okay, this is why it's important, because a legal determination is completely reviewable by the appellate court. That's all they do. A factual determination is something that's found by the trial court. They're the ones who take evidence, decide, okay, this is relevant, this is not relevant, this is my conclusions of fact. So why is it? Here it is. It's sort of okay, the district court just said, this is a question of law. Okay, tax court, you decide it.
Yeah.
Did they not just do that?
Yeah, they did.
And I'm just imagining there's a few lawyers few clerks in that office saying, are we not just telling them to decide what we should do? Baffling.
Huh.
Right. And it's sort of, the D.C. Circuit Court has the resources to decide this one.
Yeah, they're the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
So I think now we have to be concerned. It's sort of good news. But
yeah, I mean,
not,
it's not a loss for the taxpayer. So that's the good news. It's not a loss, but quite easily you can go back to the tax court to say, okay, I looked at, here's an article somebody wrote about it in France. Mm-hmm. There's my basis of upholding the commissioner.
And
so,
we can see that the taxpayers aren't afraid to appeal. So this most likely will end up back in court.
Either way, right. So either way, you're going to be reviewing it again.
So this could turn on a dime.
Right. And either way, they're going to have to make the same legal argument. So it's like, but why didn't you just decide it at the time? Mm-hmm. And, and what I don't like about the decision is, I think you should have decided the legal issue, first of all. Second of all, it's sending the tax court is something that's supposed to be an accessible forum to taxpayers. While it has its formalities, it doesn't have the formalities of district court. Mm-hmm. The somewhat sophisticated person should be able to go in there and adequately represent themselves as long as they didn't blow creating the record. I mean, somebody who's very fastidious should be able to handle okay on themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's what they want to do. They want to make it accessible to tax courts. But now with this opinion, I mean, you're really, I think, messing with tax court judges. Mm-hmm. I think you're really messing with them. Like, yeah, you looked at your analysis, but you didn't look right enough. And so now what do they? It's like, so if I'm looking at this, if I was a tax court judge, I'm like, oh my God, I really got to cover my ass.
Yeah.
I try to explain to people I think this is probably anyone who does trial work, appeals work. Look, judges aren't really, interested in justice. If justice happens, that's great. But it's rather incidental to them trying to avoid humiliation.
Oh, wow.
That's sort of what it is. And so this opinion is kind of the way it's written, and I think the way the facts are stated, it's definitely, they were taken to the woodshed a little bit. So and it could have been something, maybe there's a personal argument between parties. That happens a lot too. I was fortunate enough to win a case where the reviewing justices hated the trial judge. And so that happens when it's politically motivated. So maybe there's that going on. But really, this has got to make you think, you got to watch yourself, right?
This was a head scratcher for us.
Yeah. It's like, come on. This is one tax court judge kind of, hey, guys, from what I see, it's not in it. Here's my reasons why. Plain language of it says this. Also, France kind of treats it like the same. So I'm going to say it's the same. If he's wrong, fine. Say he's wrong, but state why. Mm-hmm. Just don't say you're wrong. Give me a better answer.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what we're going to do is continue to monitor this case, see if it does go into appeals, anything changes. You can like and comment below if you have anything to add, any questions. You can subscribe to our channel so you'll get updates on this and other awesome tax issues. We want to thank you so much for watching. You can visit IRSMedic.com if you need any help with a tax issue. IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent & Parent, LLP. Real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.